Welcome back. What does it take to become a novelist? Is it an intense process, or is it one of those things where the story just comes to you and you get published after a few tries? Well, let's find out by talking to our returning guest, S.K. Ali, author of Saints and Misfits. Welcome back to our show, Sajida.
Thank you.
So I have to ask, do you have a daytime job, or are you an author all the time?
No, I do have a daytime job. I'm a teacher.
Okay.
Second grade teacher. But I've taken a leave just
Okay.
to concentrate on writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at what point, so obviously you're teaching, so how did your life from a teacher go to, okay, I want to write a novel?
So I've always wanted to be an author from when I was 11 years old.
Aw.
So yeah, it's been there. I actually did my degree in creative writing.
Oh, nice.
Like thinking that, I'm going to start writing. But
Like
obviously,
your undergraduate degree?
yeah,
Oh,
was
wow,
in
okay.
creative writing. So and then off, real life takes over where you have family, kids, you need to put bread on the table. So I started teaching. I love children as well. So I started teaching. And so teaching is an all-consuming job. So it just kind of like takes all your focus.
Yes,
so,
I can imagine.
Yeah. So then it was like, so I was just focusing on my family, teaching, doing all these things. And then in 2007, I
Okay.
remember that clearly because I still remember the party. I was at this party and one of my friends said she had like this little list, and it was her life list. And she's had it since she was in university. And she had like checked off all these things, and we all of us were like, what is that? And she's like, this is like the stuff that you've wanted to do from when you were young. And that she wanted to do when she was young, and over time, these things she's come to do them. So we were interested and intrigued, and so she said, let's do one like right now. So we all did it. And on my one of the top things on my list was to become an author. So from that moment, I was like, okay, well, how do I do this? So I started to, blog, just personal blog, of wanting to become an author and just writing in general and trying to get back to it. And from that time, it was just a development of connecting with other authors, seeing how the journey looked, and really understanding it. There's an aspect to becoming a writer that a lot of people don't talk about, which is just that process of connecting with others and that seeing each other's journeys. Because in other professions, you're working alongside people.
Yeah, and you see them every day.
Yeah, and they're mentoring you, and there's you pick up on things, right? But when you're a writer, you're working on your own. You're a solitary task. So this aspect of connecting with others and seeing how it's done and seeing how others have done it is a very important part of being a writer. And I don't think I'd be an author today if I didn't connect with other writers and see how, how it is, and just support each other and encourage each other.
This is at the time you were blogging, so connecting with other writers at that phase.
Yeah, connecting with other writers like your sister as well.
Yeah.
So just encouraging each other on the journey.
Yeah.
And then I actually said, okay, in 2009, I said, okay, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a book. And I took a leave from work again, and I started, and I did a very quick manuscript.
Okay.
And I first thought it was done at, it was 14,000 words. It was the tiniest little book, but I thought it was done. And then I was like, wait, this actually doesn't fit what the expectations of a novel is. So that was my first try, and then I kept working at it. Eventually got it to 60,000 words, which is young adult books are between 50.
So you obviously
80.
you've done research, and you're like, this is the word count, and so I need to. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's it was a learning process.
Okay.
So finally, I got the manuscript together, and it wasn't really I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. There was, issues with it, and a lot of writers write that first book, and sometimes it's more than the first book to teach themselves how to write a book. So the first book is
your trial.
Yeah, it's you're when you're trying to see what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first book that I just kind of tucked away, and this book actually was connected to the first book in that one of the characters in that first book, people who read that first book, they really identified with her. They really liked her. She had a personality that was really interesting. So
Sorry, I have to pause and ask you.
yeah.
So the first book, people who read it, is it public? No, it's just
No.
friends who you shared it with.
Yeah, critique
Okay.
partner, friends, and just
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
just people who read it, and they really connected with that character. So
Okay.
then I decided to take that character and just to get into her headspace by like blogging as her. So I opened a private blog and blogged her like circumstances and her, you know, like what's going on in her life, and from that. The threads of this book started to happen, and that was February 11th. 2011 in February.
Okay.
And it took 5 years
From
that
point.
date, yeah,
Wow.
to finish it, because you know, working and you know, and trying to make sure it's like, I kept editing it as I go along. Like I don't do drafts, so I just did it.
So you
in
have
one
the one.
go.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, 5 years, and
Yeah.
it came from another manuscript,
Yeah.
and then you went through the blog,
Yeah.
you developed her, and then you. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's phenomenal.
It's a
and
long
amazing.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you go? So you have your first draft, you think it's ready, it's great. So you have this book, then how do you go from there to what's the process to get it published?
Some people might go the self-publishing route.
Yeah.
But there's a business aspect to that that
Okay.
I wasn't really comfortable with because I'm not really business savvy.
Yeah.
So I didn't go that route. And so I went through the route of getting a literary agent.
Okay, and what
which-
is that?
Okay, so a literary agent is a person who sells your book for you, like who sells a manuscript
To the publishing companies.
to the
Okay.
publishing companies. So they approach publishing companies and they sell it, because it's really hard for your work to be looked at if you're not agented by like the big five publishers. When I finished my book last year in March, then I approached literary agents, and alhamdulillah, I got like a lot of interest, which told me that, you know, people were ready for
Yeah.
like a story with a Muslim main character, like
Yeah.
a practicing Muslim
Yeah.
main character. So so then I chose the literary agent, and then he went and he took it to the publishers. And at that point, it was like, alhamdulillah, everything kind of lined up. Alhamdulillah, like, you know,
Yeah.
thank God that everything lined up, because Simon & Schuster
Yeah.
had an imprint. They just opened an imprint called Salam Reads, which was looking for books featuring Muslim protagonists, like for young people.
Oh, okay.
And they were looking for a young adult book. So
Perfect.
it just aligned. So alhamdulillah, we sold it last summer, and then it came out this summer.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So did you ever wonder or worry at any point that your literary agent, whoever you picked, would try to, you know, when you pitch the story, they might say, edit this or edit that.
Yeah.
Did you ever worry that your story would be lost, and or that the things that they would ask of you would not be authentic to what you were trying to do?
I didn't really worry, because I might have worried that maybe 10 years ago when I
Okay.
first started. But I was fortunate in that there was a lot of conversations about diverse books and what it looks like when a person from within a certain marginalized group or community writes their narrative, and how for a long time our stories have been gatekept, like,
Yeah.
and have been, you know, retold or told from within another lens. So at the point where I was like querying agents, like the publishing industry was aware of these conversations and seeing that when a narrative comes from a person from within that community, it might look different, or it might not be what what you think
Yeah.
is, you know, the way it should be. So I felt confident that, you know, that my story would be received as it was, like in terms of like the choices that, you know,
Yeah.
was happening in the story, and it was, and I was very happy with, you know, with my agent and with the whole publishing process. It was great in terms of that, and I think it's really because of being at this time where people are really talking about these issues, and yeah. But at the same time, I was really grateful for getting like editorial input, because literary
Yeah.
agents will work with you with like, you know, some things about the direction of certain things, like because originally in my story I had like a framing device where Jenna, the main character, is telling her story to somebody she met.
Okay.
And so that framing device was, you know, we thought it'd be better to take that off. I had that first because I was thinking of the non-Muslim reader.
Yeah.
So Jenna was telling this character she met, and it was like the way that a non-Muslim reader would
So you're trying to cater and explain it to them.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So then that was removed. So those kind of editorial direction things that come from a literary agent are, that's totally, fine. But in terms of like, your choices as as a Muslim or a writer, that I wasn't really afraid of.
So what advice do you have for other Muslim writers? Because obviously for you things lined up, you had said, right? Like it so happened. Obviously your work is amazing, but things also stars aligned for you as well, right? But what about the average person who, because you finished your draft and then it took you 1 year to publish. Is that normally the time frame for every person, generally speaking?
Yeah, like publishing times can vary, but it depends on like what the mandate of the publisher is. But usually it takes about 2 years for a book to come out. Mine came out earlier because this is Salam Reed's inaugural year, 2017. So they wanted to roll out some titles in each of their areas, like middle grade, picture book, and young adult.
As soon as possible, probably, right?
From within this year. So mine came out a bit earlier, but usually it takes about 2 years for from the time that the publisher accepts it for it to get published.
So obviously you said it does sound like it's a very rewarding at the end, but a very painful, laborious, lonely journey. So what advice do you have for young Muslim writers who want to get the Muslim stories out?
To keep writing and to see it as a journey, and to also see that you'll have your readers. And if you love writing a lot, like if you love it more than wanting to get published, you'll get published. And it's not like, that's not like, for me, it wasn't like I had to get, this thing published or I had to get published, but it was more like, I want to write this story. And like that aspect has to be there. And I feel like you will eventually, and it's a lot of being published is just sticking with it and staying on the journey, and also like working on your craft.
Do you want to, so just as we wrap up, my final question for you, do you want to stick to the genre of young adults, or are you planning to go beyond that?
Well, so as a writer, one of the most exciting things I think is like being able to write anything. So that's really important to me, that I don't get like pigeonholed or boxed as like only writing this or that, writing that. So I'm excited about even exploring sci-fi, which would sound funny to some people who know me, because I'm like not really like scientific, or not really like, I don't really understand some things about like the thing that I'm thinking about is time travel, and I don't really understand the physics of it, or like the fictional physics of it. So it's something that it excites me, because I don't want to stay like she writes, like as Kaylee writes this. I want to write different things, and I do have a picture book that's coming out that's not been announced yet. I'm working on a romantic comedy set in Istanbul, and then I would love to look into sci-fi, but at the middle grade level.
Awesome. I am super excited.
Thank you.
Looking forward to having you back on in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.